Today we're going to talk about the violin. It's one of the older instruments in the symphony. Now, not the oldest, right? The oldest is probably the flutes, which archaeologists have found flutes from like 40 to 60,000 years ago, but the violin is pretty old. It was developed around 1500 in northern Italy, probably in Cremona, also in Brescia. Way back then, when they first started making violins, there were different families and they were violin makers. We have like the Amati family, Stradivari, and Guarneri. Now, they made these violins. They sound phenomenal, and we still have them today if you are lucky enough to ever even get close to one. They are very, very expensive, but for good reason. So if you go and hear like a world-famous violinist, they're probably playing a Guarneri or a Stradivarius or an Amati. Now, the violin became pretty popular pretty quickly. Not only does it have a wide range as far as like the notes itself, but because there's bowing and there's different ways of bowing, there's so many ways to add texture to the notes, not just like a flute playing. And yes, they have spiccato and regular, but we have so many ways, I'm a violinist, to express each note. Even a down bow will sound different than an up bow. We can put accents in the middle of a note. The bow gives us such flexibility to how we allow a note to sound. Bowing is truly really, really important because it is where the sound actually is made. So if you want to know how a violin creates the sound, now we have sound waves. Now, each bow is made out of a bunch of horsehair. Not all horses can do this, okay? Now, these horse hairs, imagine they're like a line of hair and then they're coarse. So think of it like a bunch of little split ends. Let me make a draw. Okay, this is my fancy drawing. That's one bow hair, a bunch of little split ends. And those split ends pull on the string and create a vibration, which creates the sound wave. So when they're making the bow, they put every other hair the other way so that no matter which way you're bowing, there's still things pulling on the hair. As you play or as you're touching the bow hair, don't touch the bow hair, these little split ends lay down, then you get rosin and you buff it back up, the split ends go back up and you hear sound again. Also, the more you pull, the more little, I'm going to call them split ends. The more little split ends pull on it, so the more vibration, so the louder it is. The slower you bow, the less loud it is. If you push down hard, it's just going to make a sound. It's not really pretty. So volume is not necessarily created by putting a lot of pressure on the bow. It's more by the speed of the bow on the string. And finally, why do violins and other bow instruments like playing sharps? Why we prefer it over flats? Because it is easier for us. If I'm in the key of C, and that means that if I'm playing a scale, I start on a C, I end on a C, then I'm going to have no flats and no sharps. If I'm on the piano, that means I have no black keys. If I go up a fifth, I'm going to have the G. I'm going to start my scale on a G, end on a G. I'm going to have one black key and it's going to be a sharp. If I go up 5 more steps, I'm on the D. I'm going to have 2 sharps. That is how our instruments are tuned. A cello and a viola have the bottom is the C string. Then they have a G string, which is the violin's first string. Then a D, then an A, and then the violin has an E. So we are already in the circle of his heading up into the sharps. And when we place our fingers a certain way, the easiest way, the way we start, is always with these sharps. So that's why it's easier and beginners prefer to play and will play in sharp. One more thing I wanted to add. What I hear a lot is like, well, you guys don't have any frets. Doesn't that make it really hard? Actually, I think the frets would make it more difficult. As you're playing, a violin kind of goes in and out of tune. Very small, but in and out of tune. And so you're constantly adjusting where your fingers are. This isn't hard. We're not actually thinking about it. It becomes automated. But if you had frets, that would make it, I think, sound a little more out of tune, because then it's difficult to adjust to where you place your fingers. Anyway, that's it for violin. It's a beautiful instrument. There's a lot written for it. Go listen to some violin music.